Welcome to a new video. Today we have two horror stories for you. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and like this video. It was a Tuesday night, around 11 p.m. in 2013, and I was walking down a dimly lit street at night on my way home from work. My car had been in the shop, so I'd been forced to walk 3 miles home every day. The walk was barely an hour, so I was home before midnight. I live in a small town in southern Indiana, so after 10 there's rarely any cars on the road. The only vehicles you ever see are truckers heading to Indianapolis. I was about a mile into the walk when I turned on a dirt road. My house was off the beaten path, so I had to take all these dirt roads surrounded by a forest to get there. As I was turning, I heard the sound of a motor in the distance, and it was getting closer very slowly. I saw about a quarter mile down the stretch of road. I just turned off of a van moving very slowly without its lights. At first, this didn't strike me as out of place due to the fact that the town I live in there is a pretty cheap car dealership that sells used cars and vans with broken parts like broken headlights. So I just assumed this guy was one of their clients. I kept walking down the side road with the van still going slowly down the main road. About 5 seconds later, I jumped when I heard the sound of the van roar, and it sped up really fast, except now it had its lights on. I was startled, but not worried. This was until the van got closer to the turn for the side road, about 500 feet away from the turn. The van turned off its lights again and slowly slowed down. Now I was officially creeped out. I didn't want to seem startled, so I just walked faster down the road. I kept turning back constantly to see if I was being followed. Then my suspicions became reality. As I saw the van turn onto the dirt road, I was only about 500 feet from the van, so I started to walk a lot faster. I didn't want to look back, but I did, just to be safe. And what I saw frightened every bone in my body. I saw the van there stopped with both the passenger and driver's doors open. At this point, I ran for my life down the dirt road. I heard what I'm positive was a gunshot not far away, and I really thought this was how I was going to die. I made a quick turn into one of the surrounding forests and hid behind a big rock. I heard what sounded like a middle-aged man not far away say, "I think she went into the woods." And then, to my horror, what sounded like three young girls with one of them responding, "Okay, sir, we'll see if we can. Find her now." I wasn't fearing for my life. I was worrying I was going to be forced into whatever sick group this was. I was covering my mouth, trying not to make any sound, when I heard the man say, "Whoever finds her doesn't have to drink the blood tonight." A million thoughts ran through my head. Is this some sort of satanic cult? Are these girls kidnapped? Will I become one of them? I spent what felt like an eternity sitting behind a rock, being scared of any sound that I could hear. Then, to my relief, I heard cop sirens nearby. I stayed there just to be safe. When I felt the courage to look from behind the rock, I saw red and blue lights right outside the forest. I ran out screaming for help, and the cops came to me and said, "Mom, do you know about this body?" I was confused and said, "What body?" Then I saw in front of the cop car the most gruesome thing I will ever see. It was what looked like a naked young woman, gutted blood everywhere. There was no van in sight. I then explained everything to the cops: the car, the man, the girls who had to drink the blood. The cops said they'd look into it and were nice enough to drive me home. That night when I couldn't sleep, I looked out my window to see the van, the same one from before, driving slowly without its lights on down my street. This time I was smart and wrote down the license plate. I called the cops immediately and told them what I saw and gave the license plate number, as expected. When the cops came, the van was long gone. "But what they told me is what will horrify me to this day," the cop said. "We checked the license plate number. It's a plate registered in South Dakota. But the thing is, we checked with other precincts around the country, and they've gotten reports tonight that there was also a suspicious van with that license plate, one in Vermont, one in Nevada, one in Alaska, and one in Texas. They said, we'll call you if we get any more information." The cops left and I never got a call. I don't really believe in the paranormal, so my best guess is that it was some sort of cult that used fake license plates to do their sick things all across the country. But I guess I'll never know. I moved out of Indiana, and now I make sure when I see something suspicious, I bolt. During my final year of college, I went on a trip with my friends to a small island in the middle of a river that had an old house owned by a man I knew. He didn't live there, but rented it out to people during holidays. While we were there, my friends and I suffered from sleep paralysis the entire time, which led my friends to cut short their trip and return to the city. However, I decided to continue my vacation in this peaceful place. But on my first night alone, something unexpected happened. In that night, I woke up after hours of sleep, just before dawn, and heard strange noises and ringing in my ears. I tried to get up, but sleep paralysis prevented me from doing so. I opened my eyes with difficulty to find a red light in front of me. I felt movement in the room and tried to move until I regained control of my body. Then everything disappeared. The red light, the sound, everything. Peace returned, but I was very scared, so I stayed awake until morning. Throughout the day, I had forgotten what had happened until evening when it recurred. At that point, I decided to leave and called the boat owner who had brought us to this place. When I reached the city, I went to visit the owner of the island house, met him, and gave him the keys back. When he asked me about the reason for cutting my vacation short, I told him what happened. His words shocked me. He told me that he had left the house immediately after his father's death because of what the family had experienced there. I asked him what had happened, and he said that years ago, his daughter was playing outside, and when she finished playing and returned home, she left her toys there. Her grandfather went to bring the toys back to prevent them from being taken by someone else. At that time, there were other residents on the island besides them. After a few minutes of going out, the grandfather returned, visibly scared as if he had seen a ghost. I asked him why he was scared, but he didn't answer. Instead, he put his hand on his forehead and said he was going to sleep because he felt a little tired. My brother and I went out to find out the reason for our father's condition. When we went out to see what had happened, we found that the grass was burnt, not in a normal way. The burned parts formed a large circle on the ground with a pentagram and some strange symbols inside it. Some might think I'm joking, but the fact that the grass didn't grow in that area again after the incident confirms that it was more significant and dangerous than a joke. We knew that some people who lived on the island at that time practiced witchcraft. I asked him if this was what made him leave the island and not return, and he said it was almost that, in addition to the Red Man's harassment of us. I asked who the Red Man was, and he said it was the same man I had seen in the island house, and I wasn't the first person to meet him. He lived there and had appeared to several people before.